If you'd like to be able to listen to the show without ads and have full access to bonus content, that's an option. To find out how, please go to dogmanencounters.com/podcast. Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us for another live stream episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. I really appreciate you tuning in. On last week's show, our guest Cam came on and told us about a horrific encounter he had where a dogman actually attacked him. Apparently him and his friend Tyler one night in December. And if it wouldn't have been for his heroic American Bulldog, Dallas, there's a strong possibility that he might not be here today. Well, due to time constraints, we had time for him to tell us about the particulars of his encounter, but we ran out of time. I didn't have a chance to ask him the multitude of questions that I've got for him. So luckily he's agreed to come back on and answer those questions that I had and answer your questions from the live chat as well. Well, without further ado, let's bring him in here now and get him in so we can do that. Kim, thanks so much for coming back.
Man, thanks for having me back, man.
Well, it's great having you. We appreciate your time. Kim, for the listeners who missed last week's show, please tell them about yourself.
Oh, well, I'm Cam. I was born in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm 31 years old. Now live in north central Mississippi. Have 3 daughters. Married to my beautiful wife, Katie. She's a nurse. I run pest control company. I like to hunt. Love to hunt, love to fish. Love having a house full of dogs. Just a simple guy from North Mississippi, man. It's not too much about me that's crazy or off the wall.
Nothing crazy about you, but that encounter you had last December, that sure does fit the description of crazy. That was something else.
Yeah, man. That's yes, absolutely the single most crazy thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life, without a doubt.
Well, I can understand why you would say that. I hope that remains the craziest thing that has ever happened to you as the years go by. I hope nothing else approaches that, because that was just too much. Kim, it's been a week since you came on and told us about the details of that encounter. How are you now? Now you've had a week between doing that and now. Is it any easier to think about and deal with?
Absolutely. It's like we've like we said, I wouldn't say, if I lived to be 110, I wouldn't ever really just say, yeah, it's easy, but man, being able to get it out, because that was the first, I guess talking to you before we did the show, telling you the story, that was the first time I'd actually ever told in depth the story and how everything went down. But man, between yourself, and I told this, Vic, for y'all who are listening, Vic was made for this line of work. The dude's a godsend. Thank you. And the people in the comments, which I did take the time to read. I don't know how many there are, and I'm sure there's way more now, but the ones that were there when I read them, man, y'all are so, I mean, the support was amazing. And having gone so long without any kind of, support of any kind, really, that was nice. It meant a lot to me. I can't say thank you enough.
I told you the listeners are incredible. They really are. They don't know what a difference they make. I try to remind them of this, but they have no clue the difference they make in these eyewitnesses' lives. They make a huge difference. They really do. Yeah, that's for sure. Kim, on last week's show, you said that your family moved away from Memphis when you were a kid after you saw something that no kid should see. Please expand on that for us.
Yeah. So this counted into the list of crazy things that have happened. My experience with what I've shared with y'all still tops it. But man, I was in the second grade towards the end of the school year, and my mom used to drink heavily, and one day, and this isn't something her and I've talked about, but my best guess is that she got a little too loaded and went to sleep and forgot to come get me from school. But I'd walked home from school before. I had three best friends. There was my buddy Cody, and there were these twin brothers, Darius and Darius, and their names were spelled exactly the same. They just pronounced them differently. They were our best friends in the whole world. And the way it went in order from the school to my house, it was Darius and Darius's house, Cody's house, and my house, which was farther away from both of theirs than they were from each other. But we strike out walking home. We jumped the car rider line, snuck away from the teachers, walked home, and we'd passed both their places, and I was on my own, and I was walking by this gas station on a corner. And from what I remember, it was one of the first gas stations with like an all glass front where you could see it. You could see everything going on in the store. And I walked up to this corner and I pressed the the crosswalk button, waiting on a chance to cross the street. And this green Volvo, never forget it, pulls into a parking spot fast, screeches, hits the brakes, parks, and the driver gets out, runs around to the guy who was in the front passenger seat and starts putting hands on this guy, like beating him through the window. And the person who had been sitting behind the driver then proceeded to get out, run around behind the driver, who was now standing up, hitting the person through the front passenger window, and tried to pull that guy off. Well, he caught an elbow, and when he did, he fell down, and as he hit the ground, he reached in and his back was to me, so I couldn't see what he did at first, but I now know that he reached in his pants, he pulled out a pistol and shucked one and shot that guy dead right there in front of me. And man, I was 7 or 8. I couldn't have been any older than 8 because I started 3rd grade here where I live at 8 years old. And man, even that young, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I was never just stupid. And I saw that and I was like, he saw me see that. He's fixing to shoot me. He's not going to let me get away right now. And I pulled my backpack straps really tight and struck out. Didn't wait for the crosswalk light, nothing. I was gone. And they went the other direction, but it wasn't until I was all the way down the street, close to my house, that I realized that they weren't behind me. Because the whole way there, I was like, man, that guy saw me witness that. Like, he's going to get me. He's not going to let me go and tell. And I didn't tell anybody. But man, I ran home, made it home. My mom was asleep on the couch, and I went and locked myself in my bedroom. And as a kid, you don't have much sense of time, but however long later, feels like hours to me, my dad comes home, and his dad worked long hours, and comes home, and mom was asleep, and he couldn't find me, and I heard him calling me, but I was still terrified. Like, I was still scared to say anything, and he comes to my bedroom, and I was locked. I locked my bedroom door. He comes to the bedroom door, and he's knocking, Cam, buddy, what are you doing, man? Will you open the door for me? And I didn't say anything. Finally, he kicked my door in, like straight kicked my bedroom door in. And he got it out of me, what happened. And like I said, we had a yard sale. He sold everything that he didn't need to take with us. And we moved here into a rental house. And him and my grandfather built this house that we then moved into. And that's where I lived for years and years.
Wow, that's rough. I can understand why you did move. That's horrible.
Yeah, man. No. What can you do?
Yeah, I'd say so. Wow. Yeah, I was thinking you were going to tell me it was some kind of an easier going cryptid sighting or something like that, or you saw a ghost. I didn't know it was going to be that intense.
Oh no, no. I don't know which one I would have preferred, to be honest. And maybe an easier going run-in with some kind of creature that didn't want to hurt me or something might have been a little easier to deal with. Harder to explain, easier to deal with. But yeah, no, that's what happened. And I've told a handful. Some of my good friends know that story. I really don't tell it unless somebody wants to know. But yeah, that was it. So.
Yeah, I can understand why you don't reveal that unless someone asks about it. Kim, I know there's a fairly good-sized group of people who are listening to tonight's show who missed last week's show somehow, some way. With that in mind, would you mind giving us a 10,000-foot overview of your encounter for those people to bring them up to speed so they can understand what you've been through. At least they'll get a grip on what you've been through. And then after you've done that, then I've got plenty of questions for you.
Sure. So, long story short, my grandparents have a farm, or it was a farm when I was growing up. Now they got a bunch of chickens. They're old. But on this place, I ran it my whole life. Literally ran on foot, barefoot sometimes with my grandparents' pack of dogs. They had a massive pack of dogs at their house. I remember at one point they had 9 dogs, and some of them were really big. So they'd cut me loose with my BB gun or on my go-kart or just on foot or do whatever I wanted and send the dogs with me. And they knew they didn't have anything to worry about. And I ran this place for years and years and years, man. Never saw anything crazy. I don't ever feel like I was in any danger. I mean, there were big packs of hogs and stuff there, but on this place, grandparents still lived there. My grandmother brought it to my attention. She'd been losing more chickens than normal. Some neighbors across the road to the right and left had lost animals. Or sorry, not the ones to the left. They live in the old house that I grew up in, but these other neighbors had lost dogs. Some of the dogs were old, so it could have been they went and died from old age. But it kind of seemed like coyotes had been running rampant on the place. So I rounded up my buddy Tyler, one of my best friends, and told him, "Hey, man, we're gonna have to do something about these coyotes on the place," which we had done before. It's fun. We enjoy it. There, coyotes here in the state of Mississippi. Coyotes, foxes, and beavers are nuisance animals. You can shoot as many of them as you want, any time of the day, anywhere. As long as you don't trespass on somebody else's property, and there's no bag limit. You can shoot as many of them as you want. So, that in mind, we were like, yeah, let's do this. I'll make sure grandmama's chickens are cool. And, people ain't gonna be losing dogs around here if I have anything to do with it. I love my dogs. I don't mind my dogs be getting toted off. But, Tyler and I and Dallas, my dog, we geared up and took the 4-wheeler down to my grandparents' pasture, got to my grandparents' house, parked at the barn, hopped on the 4-wheeler, rode down into what I've always called the new pasture, is where they used to cut hay, and laid up under a box stand of mine shooting coyotes. And at some point, my dog Dallas, who was I guess I should have said Dallas had tactical training. He was a personal protection dog. Still the dog that my family knew and loved. He just you can't hit anybody in front of him because he'll bite you. He was trained to do so, and we take him with us. No intentions whatsoever of having him have anything to do with the coyotes we were shooting. He loved to go out, and I hadn't taken him out in forever. And it wasn't that cold. It's honestly a good feeling night for even for the beginning of December. But we see something down at the end of the field, and can't make out what it is. And after a couple of minutes, it disappears. Dallas was alerted to it, and I don't know if he knew what it was, but he knew that it was something hostile and it was a threat. And I was walking out to grab a coyote, and he starts barking at me, and we can't figure out what it is. I drag the coyote back. Dallas calms down. Tyler looks through a scope, and he can tell that something's there. We don't really know, again, what it is. And it disappears from view. So, we went on, or tried to go on about the rest of our night, trying to call in the rest of the coyotes that we were hoping we could get to come into the call. There'd been a lot of shots and reasons for them not to come back. But not too long after that, this thing got to be massive Dogman. And I did find out the branch that I used as a gauge of how tall this thing was. That branch is 7 feet 3 inches. The bottom of this branch is probably 6 or so inches thick, 7 feet 3 inches off the ground. And this thing's head was probably scraping the bottom of that thing. And it shows itself, comes down the hill to our left, stays inside the tree line. It was a lot of moonlight that night. It was really bright. And it eventually walks out. It's got me and Tyler. When I initially talked to Vic, I was like, man, I was nervous, and I guess I said it the way it should have been said last week. It scared me. I was scared. I fear no man. I fear no dog. There's not a lot in this world that scares me outside of like my kids getting hurt or something like that. But I was, if I've ever been afraid, I was afraid then. Then, and when I watched my boy shoot that fellow as a kid. But I was afraid. And even in spite of that, I didn't want Tyler to do what he did, but Tyler, and out of, I guess, fear for our safety, he didn't have any ill intent except towards this thing. Tyler fires a shot at it and he hits it. And once he shot, I unloaded my rifle and I hit it twice. I heard the contact and it runs back off into the trees. I give Tyler a few choice words because it was coming out of my mouth. No, don't, because he says, "Hey Cam, I'm fixing to send around at it." And he shoots, and I was in the middle of being like, "No, don't." Anyway, I told him what I thought about him. And he hops on the four-wheeler, cuts the headlights on, spins to where it's pointing at this thing, and man, it roars at us and it sets Dallas off. And at some point, a few seconds after that, Tyler's like, "Man, we got to go. We got to get back to the truck." So I picked my 308 up off the ground. I've got it over my shoulder. I've got my pistol, and under my other arm, I have Dallas. Vic, remind me, I have a picture of myself holding Dallas. So you can see I'm 6'1", 220, 225. I've got a picture of me holding him so you can have a gauge of how big this dog was that I was trying to pick up with one arm. But I pick him up and I go to hop on the four-wheeler, and Tyler, and I was like, "Hey man, go, pedal to the metal, don't slow down, for anything." And about that time, he's like, "Hold on, man. Hey, look, he's leaving. He's running away." So I turn around, and this thing is booking it up the hill, man. It books it up the hill and out of sight. And talking to Vic, I was like, "Man, he was headed for a pine tree thicket that marks the border at the back of our property." And I was like, "Man, unless he went up to the top of that hill and immediately cut off and went another direction," which it turns out that's exactly what he did. I say he, I assume he, I guess. That's exactly what happened. Me and Tyler gather ourselves, and Dallas was ready to fight, man. We were, in his eyes, we were in trouble, and his job was clear cut at that moment, and he was prepared to do it with no questions asked. That thing, he stood no chance, but he didn't care. It didn't matter to him. Our safety is what was on his mind. Protection was his main goal. And I dropped down on a knee and I hugged his neck. I was like, "Bubba, I love you so much. You're the best dog I've ever had in my life." And after me and Tyler gather ourselves, we're like, "Dude, let's get out of here. Let's get onto the truck, bro. We got to go." And it was at somewhere between leaving that pasture and getting almost back to my truck. I had told myself, "Man, we're fixing to have to pull up to my grandpa's house," because we weren't maybe a half mile from the house where that happened. And then as we get towards the truck, man, we're within eyesight. I could have thrown a rock and hit it. And there's an old chicken coop where once you pass it, going towards that pasture we had come from, you kind of know that you've passed all the buildings, all the structure that my grandpa has on the front of the property. And man, this thing had circled and flanked us, ambushed us. It was crouched behind that chicken coop. And of course, none of us saw it. Dallas didn't see it. He didn't smell it. He didn't hear it. Nothing. It comes out of nowhere. And I hear a roar, and then I didn't realize I'd been knocked out. Tyler just recently told me that I was completely unconscious on the ground, because the next thing I hear this, and then I'm on the ground, and I hear what sounds like dogs fighting, and Tyler's screaming for Dallas, like he's screaming at the top of his lungs, and I immediately realized, and man, you talk about a jolt. Like somebody sent a jolt of electricity through my body. It made all my hair stand up. I'm bald. I shaved my head, but all the hair on the back of my neck, on my leg, everywhere, it all stands up. And I realized that Dallas has gotten a hold of this thing, or it's gotten a hold of him. And I can't hardly see. My vision's blurry because it put me on Queer Street, man. I was rocked. And but I had my pistol in my hand. I never let go of it. I had a hold of Dallas and I had a hold of my pistol. And when it hit me, everything went everywhere. It knocked the four-wheeler, knocked me 10 feet. Like, I've been back to this spot and it sent me a good 10 feet, but probably before I ever touched the ground. But man, Dallas and this thing are tied up. And what Tyler says happened was, it didn't touch him. It tackled me, and it knocked out, in the process, it knocked Dallas off forward. And Tyler just kind of fell and spun around, and he landed like on his butt with his arm behind him. And he said, "Man, I looked up and that thing, it was on you, man. I couldn't have done anything. Like, you were toast. I couldn't help you. I couldn't do anything, and it scared me to death." But man, I don't know if this thing was going to grab me and take me off somewhere, or try to tear my head. I have no idea, but it never got to, man, because Dallas hit him like a freight train, mouth open. Tyler said, dude, he looked like a torpedo out of a submarine. He came through mouth open and got a mouth full of meat and fur right up under the left side of this thing, up under its ribs. And it didn't like it. Dallas had a hold of him, and, you know, I guess for the best he could, he was giving him what for, and it couldn't sling him loose, so it grabs him. And round about then, is I had made my feet, and my vision was, you know, enough where I knew what I was looking at, because I get up, and me and this thing are looking at each other, like I say that like I'm looking at a person or something. It's looking at me. Tyler's over. Tyler's yelling. There's another person here. Tyler is the one who shot first. This thing is looking at me. Like, it knows that's my dog. I've got your dog. I've got your whatever. I've got your friend. And it was like, man, it was like he was challenged, because by this time, man, Dallas had had enough. The thing had bit him a couple times. And he just, you know, all the fight was gone from him, man. And he wasn't dead at that point, but man, it was, you know, I got really, really mad, like rage just grabbed me, like it consumed me. And, you know, at that moment, I wasn't scared. I didn't give a crap. I wasn't, you know, I wasn't armed either. I didn't have anything, but the first thought in my head was, you know, go get this thing, get him. And, man, I start towards him, and it never, ever took its eyes off me the whole time. And it raises Dallas up and just dumps him on the ground, man. And he was alive until that point. And and you know, now I couldn't have made it. And if I did make it, you know, it could have let go of him and killed me. And he'd already saved me once. You know, he wasn't gonna save me again. But man, it was like it was telling me, like, this is what you get. But it was challenging me, man, the whole time. We never looked away from each other. We were locked eyes the whole time. I didn't look at what I was stepping on. I could have run, the four-wheeler could have been on the ground in front of me, and I would have run smooth into it and tripped, because I was not paying attention. But I make it, and this thing, I say we were 20, maybe 25 feet apart when that happened. And I had already struck out. I was in motion, and it dumped Dallas on the ground. And it did not faze me one. I mean, you know, it occurred to me that had happened, but my mind was telling me, go, go, go. And man, I made it halfway or so to this thing, and Tyler had at some point stopped screaming, and I guess found my rifle on the ground or under the four-wheeler or wherever he found it. And you know, before we had left from down in the new pasture, I had emptied it, but I reloaded it, put the 5 in there. And man, Tyler open fired from the hip like John Wayne, and let this thing have it, and hit him 5 times. 5 times from, you know, 20 yards, 20 feet, it's 7 yards roughly, with a 308. And it runs. It turns around. It didn't drop. It wasn't. And if it died away from us, because, you know, it ran away from me, because in my mind, I was like, man, it's getting away. I'm never going to catch him. He's gone. He's going to get away. He's going to get away with everything that he did. And, but man, it broke my arm when it hit me. And, something I didn't say, you know, I mean, it was stupid, I guess, but just to put everything into perspective for what I'm going to say at the end. Yeah. Once it was gone, you know, I realized Dallas is on the ground, dead behind me. And, I turn around, and man, I just couldn't contain myself, man. I run to him, and I put my hand under his head, and he was just bloody, and he was broken. And man, my world was crashing down around, you know, like right there. And, man, I punched the ground. Like, I screamed and punched the ground, and I broke the mess out. Like, my left hand was purple and yellow and all kinds of stuff. And, you know, at the time I didn't realize that it was broken, but I was so mad, you know. And I pass out, and I didn't realize I'd pass out till I woke up on my back. I was holding my head off the ground. And that was when he told me that my arm was broken and my nose was bleeding because I had fallen on my face. And he had taken Dallas and put him in my truck. And he was like, man, we got to get you to the hospital. And I was like, well, we got to go tell Grandpa there's a werewolf out here. You know, and when that happened, man, that happened like maybe 150 yards from the house. If my grandfather had been out, and again, this is 1 o'clock in the morning. We started shooting coyotes around about 9 o'clock, and 9 o'clock, 9:30 probably. And this is between 1 and 1:30, and I knew he was going to cuss me, so I was still going to wake him up. And we walked to the truck, and Tyler had found the guns, and my pistol was sitting there. And man, just he was. When I got up, I was walking up on the truck, and I was just hoping that I knew better, but I was still just kind of hoping he'd have his head up. Maybe his tail would thump at me or something. And it was not. He was still there. He was cold, laying there, stiff. And I was scratching his ear, just thinking, like, big goofball, you could have lived. But he saved me, man. He chose to give it up and to save me. And man, all over again, I was mad. I was, just I don't know the words to say. I just enraged, just overcome with rage like I have never felt before. And I grabbed my pistol and I stuck one into it. And this is why I mentioned all the things that were wrong with me. But so I'm going. I had planned right there, and on split second to go after this thing because I knew where it had gone or where it had headed off to. So in hindsight, I have nothing but a pistol. Or that's all I grabbed was a pistol. I've got a broken hand. On what my left hand's broken, my right arm is broken in two places. I also had 2 cracked ribs on the right side because it hit me on the right side. I'm bleeding, my face is bleeding, and I struck out to go find this thing. And Tyler, he's, I know him shooting this thing is probably what jump started everything, but man, he didn't mean anything by it. And he's a good friend. He was just trying to protect us. And then he was trying to protect me too, because like the, irrational person I was in that moment, I struck out to go find this thing. And, he runs and grabs me and he's hollering, no, you can't go, stop, And I slapped his arm off of him. I was like, man, you get off me, don't touch me. And he let me go a few more steps. He's like, man, you really want your daughters to lose their dog and you at the same time in the same night? And man, it just kind of took it out of me. And I lost it and just kind of hit my knees. And we went from there, and Tyler helped me in the truck, and we went and woke my grandpa up. And he was angry with me for waking him up until I told him what happened. And I explained this too. My grandpa's very stern, very no nonsense, very, he's the type of person. I don't know if y'all ever seen Goodfellas, but man, Grandpa moves slow because he don't move for anybody. People get out of his way. Like he's that type of dude. But I'm his only grandson and his firstborn grandchild at all. So I hold a spot in his heart that not everybody else could hold, I guess. And man, I told him what happened one time, and I did not have to tell him, like, Grandpa, I'm not joking with you. I'm just letting you know this is what happened. And he was like, well, where's Dallas? And we go and we look at him, and this man, Grandpa's 75, and he's cut from a different cloth. They don't make him like him anymore. And he was like, man, Tyler, you take my truck, y'all go to the hospital. Because Tyler told me, he was like, damn, we got to get you to the hospital. You got a broken arm. And it was throbbing already by that point, but I didn't care. And Grandpa said, Tyler, take my truck and y'all go to the hospital. And I go bury Dallas. Like I was really fixing to let him go out in the woods right then with a now Dogman, but back then I had never heard that term before. So there's a werewolf out here somewhere. And yeah, right, I'm going to let you go out. And, he was like, well, I got my pistol. Like, Grandpa, give it up, So we go, and he keeps watch for us and holds a pistol while we're burying Dallas. And, man, that was the biggest hole I've ever dug in my life in so many ways. And I buried him next to I had another American Bulldog, looks just like him. His name was Roscoe. And Dallas, I had to put Roscoe down, unfortunately. And that was one of the worst days of my life. And then I find Dallas, and they're identical. They look just like each other, except they're mirrored. Dallas and Roscoe are both solid white. Roscoe had a brindle mark on his left ear. Dallas had a brindle mark on his right ear. And he was probably 30 pounds bigger. But they were identical dogs. And when I found him, I was like, I was supposed to find you. You were supposed to be with me and my children, because they were tore up over Roscoe being gone. They love that dog. And Dallas just kind of waltzed in and was like, hey, let me fill that spot for everybody. And he did it effortlessly. We loved him so much, and he loved us too. But that's you know that's why Dallas isn't here anymore, because he uh he gave it all to keep me and Tyler alive. And Tyler went home to his. That thing might have finished me off and turned and grabbed a hold of Tyler. I mean, you never know. There's no telling what would have happened. But we're both here, alive, and able to tell this story because he saved us. Our children have fathers, and our husbands have. Or sorry, our wives have husbands. Because of him. But that's a little longer than I intended it to be. But man, that's what happened. And, that was what we did the show on last week.
No, don't worry about how long it was. I mean, I told you it's all about exposure. The more you talk about it and think about it, the easier this is going to be to deal with. It's never going to be easy, but it will get easier. So as long as we're working towards that goal, then we're making good progress. So like I said, please don't apologize. I'm wondering though, Kim, last week you said that you've got Dallas's daughter. How's she doing?
She's a goofball. Dude. She's a big old girl, man. She looks just like her daddy. She's her mother, Rosie. She's definitely the sweetest. Or Rosie's the sweetest dog I've ever owned. I've had a bunch of different dogs that were the best in certain categories, but Rosie's sweet as can be. And Bree got that from her, but man, she's like her daddy. Like you can't. My wife likes to roughhouse with me and punch my arm or wrap me up and hug me real tight. And Bree don't like that. You can't be too rough with somebody in front of her. She's like, no, y'all calm down. I mean, she's every bit of Dallas's little girl, man. She's and my children have, it was like clockwork. Dallas was gone, and I had to tell them what I had to tell them, fortunately. But that when they learned that, Dallas is in heaven, he's with Roscoe. He's not coming back anymore. Coyote's got him. That's what I told my kids and my wife. And they immediately, Bree just kind of took that spot for them as much as she could, took that spot, and man, they loved her anyway. But now, she's the center of the universe, and it's I'm so glad I've got it. My uncle has her sister, Roscoe and Rosie. Dallas and Rosie had 4 puppies, the one litter that I actually had between them, and my uncle has another female, and my buddy Tyler's dad has Dallas's biggest son. So I get to see them regularly. And I don't get to see Mo, who is the son. I don't get to see him as much, but man, he's just like his daddy too, except he's clumsy. He's a big goofball. But Bree's doing good, man. She gets all the attention, and she serves her purpose, man. She's filling the hole in my little girl's hearts. I couldn't really ask for much more.
Sure sounds to me like she is a chip off the old block. I want to see some pictures of her. When you get a chance, could you send some to me?
Sure. Oh, I got a buttload of them. Yeah, I'd be glad to. Videos, pictures. My kids sleep on top of her. She's like, like the puppy pillow.
Well, that's great. Yeah, sounds like she is doing a great job filling in. This might be a sensitive topic, and if it is, don't worry about answering this. But if you are okay answering this and addressing this, then please do. What I'm getting at is you contacted me last week with a question about a comment that you saw that was left for last week's show. Are you okay talking about that, sharing what that question was all about, and sharing your thoughts on that?
Yeah. First, I screenshotted it so I could see more of it. But the gist of it is, I'm not going to call this person by name or anything. And they weren't being this negative, because one of the things they said was, I'm sorry, I hate to hear that. That first of all, say that. But I just think strongly. My opinions are always strong. But this person essentially said, I'm sorry for your loss. I'm sorry for this, but man, you just didn't know. You were in this thing's backyard killing its pet coyotes. And look, to give you an analogy, I used to do granite countertops, right? To cut a granite countertop out, you got to set the saw in the right place. You got to start at the right measurement to end up at the right measurement. Dude, if you start with a theory that's wrong from the jump, you're probably going to come to the wrong conclusion. And wrong is not even the word for the outlook that apparently this person had on the situation. Because, man, I don't care how long these things have been around. I don't care how big or strong or fast or scary or capable of taking my life they are. Man, that thing was in my backyard. And if he's alive, he's full of lead right now because he was in my backyard. Literally in my backyard where I grew up. You know, the notion that I was in this thing, dude, we can just do away with that right now. You know, that's not that's not something I'm going to entertain, you know. And what logic someone would use to justify that as their standpoint is just beyond me. Because, man, he was on my turf. And I'm not saying, oh, I own this property. You know, I ain't trying to sound like somebody who's trying to tell you what they own, but, man, that's my family's land. That's where I grew up. And, man, that thing robbed something from me. Because I'm not even going to take my daughters. My middle little girl is 4 years old. My oldest, she's into playing games and watching TV. She don't want to go hunting. She's like, it's cold, I don't want to go. But my 4-year-old, man, she wants to go hunting with daddy and has been asking me since she could really articulate, daddy, I want to go hunting. It's a lot clearer stuff now, but I'm not going to take her. You know, I'll never in my life put her anywhere where I even have an inkling that something like that could happen. And all from one instance. But regardless of that, that thing was still on my turf. That thing was in my backyard. And, to be honest, I hope the thing ran out, because, man, there was a lot of blood, brother. There was that thing was leaking when he left. And I didn't notice it right there in that moment as it was going down. But, man, there was, this was in December, and I don't believe it rained for a while after that. But, man, 2 or so weeks, I didn't go out and sit in my stand and wait on it until I was out of my calf, which I did do that. To be honest with you, might have been stupid, but I had every intention of putting a bullet in this thing. But, man, that thing, I mean, it was leaking. Like, there were blood spots on the ground for a while. And, man, to be honest, I hope it ran off and died. But if not, call me crazy, but, man, I'd like a shot at him just to prove that he better not be coming around in my backyard again. You know what I mean? Like, and if those were his pet coyotes, so what? The beasts of the earth are here for us. And, to be on my property, to come out and try to be, and, maybe if Tyler hadn't shot that thing, maybe if he hadn't shot that thing, things wouldn't have jumped off like they did. Maybe, sure. I'm reasonable. I can accept that. But regardless, that thing had no business being in any kind of close proximity to me, my family's land, my friend, my dog, or anything. And if I ever see him again and I've got something to put around in him with, man, I'm going to put one anywhere I can in him. I mean, he's going to know. Yeah, I might try to come around and act spook, because that's what most people's testimonies are. When I listening to your show, because I love this show. It's somewhat comforting to me hearing other people's experiences. Some are similar, some are way different. And some of them say these things show up and you think it's going to get you and it acts spooky, and then all of a sudden you turn around and it's gone. Man, maybe that's what would have happened. But, even if that would have been the extent of what would have happened if Tyler hadn't shot this thing, man, you're not going to show up and try to spook me. And, man, get out of here. Like, that's not, I'm not that type of person, man. I was scared in that moment, because that's just, I was about to say a fairy tale. It's a nightmare, a living, walking nightmare. I watched werewolf movies as a kid. I was intrigued with it. I loved it. It was scary, especially as a kid, but they were just movies. And then all of a sudden, boom, it's here and it's real and you're dealing with it. I'm just not, you're not going to walk out and act scary to me. I mean, you're going to eat lead if you do something like that. And he did, and he will again if I see him again. But just, yeah, no. And it's because he was in my domain. I'm not king of the earth or anything like that, but to say that, you put yourself beneath this thing, and that's not where I stand, And again, I get worked up talking about this. I'm not mad at this person. I'm sorry if that's the way I say. I'm not mad at this person. We just have very, very differing, opinions, and mine is based off the kind of person I am in my heart. I back down from no one or nothing, and Dallas didn't either. You know what I mean? I mean that's he did what he needed to do to keep me living and breathing. And it was all this thing's fault, whether Tyler shot it or not. It had no business coming around trying to be spooky to me. I'm not afraid of you. I was scared in that moment because it was like, shock factor. Like, holy crap, what is that? But yeah, I'm not the afraid type. When when I was born, they didn't install a flight response in me. If somebody ever pulled a gun on me, point blank, tried to rob me, I'd get myself shot or possibly take their gun from. I mean, there's only two possibilities because I'm not going to run. And from this thing, it's not any different. I'm not going to run. If I can stand and fight, I'm going to stand and fight, and we did. And we see who ran off with it. Another thing, I didn't see this thing have a tail. It turned directly with its back to me when it ran from me the way it did. And I didn't see a tail. So I was going to say, you can run with your tail tucked. I don't know if that's literal or metaphorical or whatever, but he ran with his tail tucked when it was all said and done. So no, he better not come back into my domain. I better not ever see him again. And if so, he better kill me because, as long as I'm alive and breathing, he's not safe to be within my presence. He, she, whatever it was, but this person did, apart from our differing opinions on, how the situation was, they did tell me, hey, I'm sorry for your loss and for that. Thank you. I just, our opinions are very, very different. We're apparently different people.
I saw that question and it took me aback. I read it a couple of times and yeah, they are entitled to their opinion, just like you're entitled to yours. But there was another question that got my attention even more. And that question or statement, I guess you could kind of say it was more of a statement than a question. They posed the idea that the Dogman had vengeance on its mind because you and Tyler were shooting its buddies, the 11 coyotes. And as you'll remember, Cam, in our conversation, I think it was Tuesday night or something we spoke this past Tuesday. If you'll remember in our conversation, I told you that, yeah, I mean, a lot of eyewitnesses have reported seeing these guys running with packs of coyotes and they seem to be buddy and all that. And I'm sure that's where this commenter got their opinion from on that. But every bit as common as that would be other eyewitnesses reporting witnessing that. And the next thing you know, everything goes from being buddy. They're just running along with the pack to all of a sudden they just reach out and grab a coyote that's within grabbing distance and rip it apart for no reason, for no apparent reason. So yeah, I can understand why that person might think from listening to various shows that these guys are just buddy with coyotes and they're their pets. But there's a dark side to that as well. They're not above wanton slaughter when it comes to coyotes themselves. So from you guys shooting those coyotes, I can understand why someone who doesn't know that they've got that dark side when it comes to coyotes as well, I can understand that person thinking, okay, well, you killed their pets. That's why it was so upset. But like I said, they're not above doing the same thing themselves for no reason. So if whoever it was that left that comments listening tonight, please keep that in mind.
And if that were viable, if that was something true that could be proved, that would make all the sense in the world. Yeah, and I could see where that idea might come from. No doubt. I have heard stories where these things were leading packs of coyotes. I mean, it's but as you said, it's not. I don't think they really care too much. Something like that. I mean, and sinister, evil is that's what I get from this thing. I mean, it's I just don't. What's the point in showing up and being scary and trying to terrify a creature that's small? Talking about humans that are smaller and meeker, or so you think. Smaller and physically less than you. What do you? I don't get it. Evil is what I get. That's what I call that. That's like the equivalent of like I'm not gonna say supernatural because man, this thing ate a lot of lead, and it bled. It's not supernatural. It's a living, breathing thing that has to eat and drink to stay alive. But yeah, I mean that's like a bully essentially, and he took something from me, but he also got what was coming to him, and yeah, I don't think there's much room in him for compassion for a pack of coyotes because man, this thing. I know for a fact some of these coyotes came from a different direction from where he came from. Like they weren't running together when that happened. And maybe some of them were, I don't know, but I know some of them came in from the right side of our pasture, like they had crossed the big gravel company that our property butts up to. And this guy came from, he came from over by where my favorite deer stand is, which is the complete opposite direction. So it's not like he was running with these things, and it's not to say they'd never crossed paths or anything, but I'm with you on that one. I don't think that held too much water.
I don't either. I really don't. Cam, let's get to the questions now from the listeners in the live chat. The first one in queue is from Andres Carrizales. And Andres's question is, the woods where you were, are there any stories or myths like it being haunted?
So, all right. And I told Vic this too, and it's just a little bitty thing, but I also connected it with, maybe the reason why my grandpa believed me when other than seeing Dallas in the bed of my truck and hearing me, because I was barely holding it together when I was talking to him. I about cried myself out, and I was kind of in that numb stage, and I'm sure he could tell that something was up. But my grandfather told me in the house that I went to warn him in, the house he still lives in, when it was built, I wasn't even a twinkle in my daddy's eye yet. I wasn't even a thought. And he's told me on more than one occasion, he said, man, and he called it a booger, what he called it. And I've heard it called a woolly booger by one of my friends, but it was, talking about two totally different things. Grandpa said, yeah, the only thing I've ever experienced with a booger or anything like that, he said, I was building this house, and they were living a couple miles up back to the highway, a couple miles back towards town. And he said that he had all the framing done, and he had like a work light or two hanging in there. And it was dark. That dude worked 10 o'clock at night to get something done. And he had those work lights on, and he cut them off, got in his truck. And at the time, they already had the rest of the property prepped. They just didn't have the house built. They had 270 something odd head of longhorn cows at the time. And that was before they brought the Angus bulls in and started crossbreeding. But he drove up to the part of the driveway because the yard was electric fenced off where the cows couldn't get in because the dogs would chase them. They had blue heelers and stuff. And he gets out of his truck and unhooks the electric fence so he can drive through. And he said he turned around and walked back to the truck, and he saw the light was back on. And he was like, no, I turned that light off. So anyway, he gets in the truck, reverses back to the house, gets out, cuts the light back off, and goes back through. And when he gets, he left the electric fence open. When he pulls through and gets out to close it, the light's back on again. And he went and turned it off again. He said, man, second time I went and turned it off, it's a little spooky. He said, I was a little spooked. And, understandably so, because he was by himself. And there's, at that time, that house that I grew up in wasn't even a thought. So it was nothing but woods. And then the neighbors to the right, their house wasn't there. There was no neighbors until you got all the way across the highway, and their driveway's a half mile long. It's right at, give or take. But other than that, no, there hasn't been any, to my knowledge, because I don't even know who owned the property before we lived there. So in my family and within the knowledge that we have, that's the only, and that was just a story my grandpa told me. But no, I guess not. No.
Yeah, I'd say not as well. Yeah, when you told me about that story, I was thinking, wow, what would I be thinking if I was experiencing that? And I'm not really sure how I would respond to that. That's strange. It really is. The next one in queue is from Robin, and Robin wants to know, have you thought about gearing up with heavy firepower and some help to go see if you might be denning on your land?
100%. Absolutely. And I didn't use those exact words, but I did tell Vic that the first time I ever talked to him. And like I said, man, y'all show Vic love in any way you possibly can, because the guy has this way of letting you get stuff out without, questioning you during. And just letting you spill what's on your mind, and then having something sensible to say to you, because I said something just like what you said to him. And I was like, man, yeah, I want to kill that thing. I want to find him, and I want this. And he was like, yeah, and I understand. But, that may not be the best idea. And, he's right. He's absolutely right. And I haven't put thoughts away of going, and because, I mean, man, he killed my Bubba man. That was, I mean, and on top of that, like I said, he took things from me that he probably didn't even know he took from me. Like, my little girl can't even go hunting there anymore. I won't take her to the pond to go fish it, man. The best bass I've ever caught. I was 5 years old. My grandpa took me fishing, and I caught it out of the pond on the front of the property. And man, my grandpa cried tears of joy when that happened. He was so happy for me. He held me, and we rejoiced. He cried, and I cannot take my safely, or with any kind of peace of mind, take my daughter there, any of them, and have an experience like that now. So yeah, no, I have 110% thought about, and I asked, I'm not going to say his name, but there was a guest on a show way prior to me, or on Vic's show prior to me, that I asked Vic. I was like, man, you think what that guy was saying was true? And if so, will you put me in contact with him? And he's like, Cam, I don't want to put you in any kind of danger, and it's, yeah, no, I've absolutely thought about going and looking for this thing. And, I mean, Denning, there's so our place is somewhere along the Holly Springs National Forest. I'm not trying to give away my address or anything like that, but the Holly Springs National Forest is massive. It is so big. And this is a conversation Vic and I also had. This thing could have been living anywhere in the Holly Springs, because we're not far from it at all. And there's plenty of game. There's plenty of, water hole. There's plenty of everything this thing needs to survive. So I seriously doubt it's denting on our 100 acres. Because like I said, growing up, I ran every inch of that property on foot more times than I could count in a lifetime, and now there's bobcat dens, because I have found them, smoked bobcats out of them. But there's really nowhere, there's not an inch of that property that I haven't laid my eyes on. Now, I don't run around in the woods unless I'm hunting like I used to, or I don't run around like I used to unless I'm hunting. But, and that's during deer season, and that's about the only time I do it. But, man, a den for that thing would have to be so big. There's no way I could miss it, because I have walked the whole property hunting before, just stalking, get stagnant, sitting in the deer stand, you get up and walk. And if I'd ever come up on something like that, I don't know what I would have done, but something would have been done about it at some point. But I'd just like to run up on this thing when it didn't see me and I had a shot at him or something. I'm not gonna say I'm gonna go looking for him, because my kids need me. I don't want to, I don't want to leave this world and leave my wife and children without me. But yeah, no, I've definitely, I ramble sometimes, but yes, no, to answer that question, I've absolutely thought about that.
Well, it's hard to sum it up, so it's definitely not rambling. The next one up is from Bang Bang, and it is, I guess they want to know from me if Dallas alerted prior to the attack. No, he didn't. This was just out of the blue. He did roar, but other than that roar, there weren't any signs he was about to attack. And then they also want to know if Dogmen have a cloaking ability. Well, there have been some credible eyewitnesses, quite a few credible eyewitnesses who've reported that. So apparently it's a strong possibility that they do. It's not like they need to have any other abilities to make them more formidable, that's for sure. But it would appear that that's definitely possible that they can do that. All right, let's move on to the next one. The next question is from Jen R. And her question is, Cam, are you afraid he will seek revenge or even bring more Dogman next time? Will you get trail cam?
No. Like I said, I've gotten over if I saw him again, I may get that shock set, not shock set, that shock factor type of fear. But man, he's, the idea of him doesn't scare me at all. It, kind of ticks me off a little bit just because, but the thing is, I have trail cameras. They're right now, because I left them out there since last hunting season. And as of right now, there are 1, 2, 3, 4. I know for a fact there are 4, and I hunt every one of those spots. There may be 5. One that Tyler had one out there, and I do believe it was a like a blue camo mossy oak camera, and I think he picked it up at some point before that, because Tyler hasn't been out there since then. Has not stepped foot on that place since then. But I think he got his. So there are 4 out there, and there are the first place that, and I assume this thing was what was down at the end of the pasture that Dallas barked at when I initially walked out, before anything actually transpired. When I walked out to grab those 2 coyotes that we had left laying, there is a camera right down there, like probably within 15 feet of where we saw whatever it was. And I assume that's what it was. And if so, it didn't want us to know it was there yet. And it very, very quietly left from where it was, because it was so big. It's hard to be quiet when you're that size, unless you're trying. And it left from where it was and went, I guess back around the hill that it ended up topping and coming down towards us on. But honestly, from where it was, it may not have crossed into the camera's field of vision, because I don't have any pictures of this thing. And I might have said that to Vic when I very, very first talked to him. I've got trail cameras. I have them. There's prime deer hunting on this place, and I've never seen a decline in the deer population, and I've never had a picture of this thing on a trail camera. Now, I will say, the winter before last, or hunting season before last, if you will, we did have some problems with, and I feel like it was one of the employees at this gravel pit that I mentioned our property butts up to on one side, because we had problems way years ago with those folks shooting our cattle. And my grandpa put a stop to that with a quickness. It happened twice. And after the first time he was like, yeah, I'm not sure exactly what happened in there. No camera. The second time it happened, he went over there and he was like, hey, the next cow that turns up dead, somebody over here is going missing. And we had no problems with it after that. But right over there where these cows been shot, I had problems. My grandpa has one friend that's allowed to hunt on this property. He's got hunting rights out there because they're like brothers. And he had a really, really nice lock-on deer stand with a swivel chair in it. It's got burlap around it. You can't, not burlap, but what that material is, it's camo. It's not ghillie. It's not like ghillie suit, whatever it is. And this thing had been snatched like around a tree, like somebody had tried to take it, but they couldn't get up there to undo the top of it or something. And then I had that trail camera that I was talking about that was close to where this thing was initially, if that's what it was when Dallas lost it and started barking the first time. That trail camera had been turned around and it got pictures. And my grandpa was like, well, how do you know it was? Because it took a picture of the hill behind it. So at one point the camera somebody had turned it around without walking into its field of vision, because there was no picture of a person or of anything else. That you see a picture, a butterfly flying in front of it will set it off if it's close enough. But there was a picture of, just the woods that it was looking at, where it was meant to catch deer coming out. And then the next picture is the hill behind it. You can see little vines and stuff, and you can see the leaf cover on the ground. And then the next picture it takes, it's turned back around correctly. And the odds that a deer did that, it's crazy. So I don't know if that thing did that. I don't know. Or at the time, like I said, we had problems with people sneaking onto the property. I feel like that's what that was. But I do have cameras. I don't have any pictures. And I don't know. I have other than mine and Tyler's eyewitness account, I don't have any evidence that this thing was there.
Yeah, well, you can wonder about things like that until you're blue in the face. I mean, around a farm like that, strange things are going to happen. Around a normal property, strange things are going to happen. So now you're hypersensitive. You've had that traumatic Dogman encounter, and anytime something strange happens, that's going to be your go-to. But yeah, try not to let that cripple you or anything like that, because that's not going to do anyone good. But I've got another question for you from Bang Bang, and their question is, has the government on any level been lurking around your land?
No. I mean, unless they're doing it unbeknownst to me. But my grandfather's the type of person, if you drive down the driveway and turn around before you get to the house and leave, he will know that somebody drove down the driveway. He'd be like, hell, the rocks are disturbed. Look over there. You see that, son? Somebody drove down my driveway and turned around. I mean, no joke. Nothing. At 75, he's starting to get dementia too, but nothing gets past him whatsoever. So I mean, unless they've been coming in at nighttime and snooping around, I don't think so. Because I heard the first account I ever heard on Vic's show was a guy named Brandon, and he says that the group that came in after he had his encounter took all of his SD cards out of his trail cameras, and mine are still there. Or well, let me say that I haven't checked. They're probably still in there, and if they're not, then I'll come back. We can do another one of these, and I can answer that question accordingly. But no, I really don't think so. Because I mean, nobody knew about this, and I mean, me, Tyler, my grandfather didn't know about this, or nobody else other than us knew about this until I talked to Vic. Part of why it's been so helpful to me is because it was inside for must have been 7 months, 8 months, however long it's been now. And in that time, no, I don't think so. And if they hear this, because I mean they listen to everything. You can talk about something out loud while you're holding your phone, and the next day you've never typed it into your phone, you've never searched for it. The next day you'll have an ad for it on Facebook. They hear everything. So if they're listening to this, you better not come snoop around on my land. And if so, you better announce yourself, because to be honest with you, my grandpa will shoot you. Like if he sees you walking, he don't know who you are. He's going to aim at you. He's going to give you one chance. Hey, turn around, put your hands in the air, walk towards me. And if you don't, you're going to catch lead. But no, I don't think so. I really don't. I don't have any reason to think so, if I can say it that way.
They do have a lot of resources, but there is a limit even to their resources. So unless it's really pressing you, they're not going to come out there and
Right.
pay you any mind. So it wouldn't surprise me in the least that they haven't done that at all.
Yeah.
The next one up is from Andres Carrizales, and Andres wants to know, did you or your neighbors notice any difference in the way animals behaved? Pets, farm animals gone missing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, that was so my grandma had, like I said, she'd been losing more chickens than normal, and they've been really stirred up, not laying. Now, other than that, they only have dogs, and my grandfather didn't say anything about the dogs acting weird, but the people across the road, the elderly couple, they had 2 dogs named Joe Bob and Buddy, who I had known for years. They were old. I believe both those dogs were like 16. They lived long lives, but they both went missing in the same day. Like they both disappeared at the same exact time. Now, could one of them have, could they have gone out on a walk? One of them killed over dead, and the other one just laid down and died. Dogs will die from I'm doing air quotes right now, broken heart. If their companion dies, they will lay down and starve themselves to death. They will do that, and that is a possibility that could happen. But that being said, the neighbor that lives to the right, we'll call him Jason. I grew up with this guy. I rode the bus with him. I used to have a little dog named Cal. Cal was like Arnold Schwarzenegger dog. He was little, but he was really muscular, and couldn't tell him anything. Couldn't take him anywhere. He didn't know how to act. But he struck out one day. And man, I didn't see him for 2 weeks. And I was like, where is my buddy, man? Where did he go? And turns out, and I was calling, and he heard me the whole time. I was calling him, searching for him. I was upset. I was like, Dad, man, Cal's gone, man. Something got him, or he ran off and found somebody else to live with, which was crazy. He loved us to death. No, he was next door at Jason's house having a litter of puppies with his female. Well, Jason had these 2 puppies, and they were identical. Like I said, I don't know if dogs produce whatever genes it is that make twins, but these puppies were identical to the last hair on their body. They were the same color. They had the same temperament, everything. And they were like 5 or 6 years old. I think they were 6 when this happened. And they both went missing in one night. But that's why we thought it was coyotes. Coyotes do that. I mean, and between the chickens, I mean, hell, the chickens, it could have been fox, bobcat. I mean, we got all that around our house. There's big bobcats on our place, lots of foxes, unusual number of foxes, if I may say. But yeah, no, there wasn't a bunch of strange behavior in the animals, and we don't have horses and cows and such like we used to. So there might have been if we had that, but as far as I know, my grandparents' dogs hadn't been acting normal, but there had been animals going missing at a much higher rate and over a much larger span of land than was normal. Yes.
Yeah, unfortunately, it'd probably been around for a while then. Wouldn't be
Right.
surprised. I can't believe the time has flown by so quickly. We're about at the 70-minute mark, so we're going to need to get ready to wrap this up. But before we do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
I love y'all to death, man. Not trying to sound corny, but the support, the number of y'all, that have said, I don't know Dallas, but I love him. And, I'm sorry for you, man. That's been, apart from my kids hugging me and telling me, Daddy, it's okay. Man, that's been some of the best medicine, cause that's all, that was my goal in telling this. It was nice to get it off my chest, but my goal was not to get it off of my chest. It was to let people know that my Bubba man is a hero, and I'm here because he saved my butt. My children are able to run to me for me to pick them up when I get home from work because Dallas isn't here anymore. And I just wanted people to know that because he deserves it. He was a good boy. When I went to get him from the guy that I got him from, he was known around the neighborhood. And there was a little rabbit that lived in the bushes outside this guy's house, and Dallas was friends with it. Monster dog. And Dallas was friends with this little rabbit. The guy told me, he said, there's a rabbit lives in the bushes that plays with him. And when I went to pick him up, I had bought him from this guy, and I sent him the money, went to pick him up, and the people across the street, these two older ladies, come out, and I'm putting Dallas in my truck. They're like, "Oh no, where is Dallas going?" And I was like, "Well, I know Ray didn't tell y'all, but he's coming to live with me." And man, they were so upset. Everybody loved him. And, everybody deserves, or, he deserves, for anybody who wants to hear it or cares to hear it, to know what he did for me, and that was my goal. And it's been, Vic has done the best job in the world of helping me tell this story. And y'all have done such a wonderful job. Whoever's listening, whoever, told me they were thinking about us, I love y'all to death. I don't even know you, but thank you.
That's awfully well said. I told you not to beat a dead horse, but I told you the listeners who listen to the show, they're just amazing. And also, like I touched on, they have no clue how much they help you and other eyewitnesses when it comes to dealing with your encounters. So, yeah, for that and other reasons, I just can't thank them enough. I really can't. But having said that, Cam, please remember, I've told you several times, you're never going to be alone in this. If you ever do need help in the future, if you start to regress, then yeah, by all means, like you did this week, just reach out to me and let me know. And yeah, we'll set up another conversation so I can find out what's wrong, what's ailing you, and we'll get that addressed. All right.
Absolutely, man. And I appreciate you so much. Been too good to me.
Well, you deserve it. That's what I'm here for. Glad to do it. But yeah, having said all that, thanks again so much for your time, for coming on and sharing this experience. I know how draining it's been on you to share it, especially twice here. But every time you do it, you're going to grow from the experience. So it's been a good reason to do so. But having said that, thanks again so much for your time and have a great night.
Likewise, Big. Thank you, brother.
You're welcome. We'll see ya. And to everyone out there listening, thanks again so much for listening. Thanks again so much for the support that you offer these eyewitnesses. Like I said, if you've had a Dogman encounter and would like to be a guest on the show, or if you'd like to just speak with me about it in private because you need help, well, either way, please just go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. If you can do that, then I'll contact you to schedule a conversation with you so we can take it from there. But having said all that, thanks again so much for listening, everyone, and have a great weekend.